ladies and gentlemen. Please keep this page open. Do not click away. Do not adjust your computer.
It's funny. I see my track. I don't see your track.
Oh, I don't see any.
Like on the right-hand side. You don't see anything?
No, they don't let me see a track. I'm just a plebe.
You're just a plebe. Good evening, Minsta. Good evening, Mark. Hello, all the other people, all the other members of our live chat this fair evening.
Hello, Cleveland.
Oh, Minsta. I know. I know.
She may not want to know, but she does.
I may not want to know. I also know what the Braves did not do in the most recent game. So, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
That's why we play multiple games.
Okay, so I have to tell you this story, which you will both hate and love, because you hate the Dodgers and love Eileen. She was so nervous.
It's true.
We were driving to the Eternals preview yesterday, which she had to see for work. But that's why we couldn't stay home, because she's like, well, I got to go to this. She was nice enough to take me. And she was so upset about the game. She was like, I don't want to listen to it in the car. Nothing. So
she's exactly like I
was
am.
Like,
she's
all right,
so funny.
all right. I will tell you if something good happens. So I would tell her like 2 outs, 1 out. And then at one point I went, Bellinger hit a 3-run homer. The game is tied, and she was like, "What?"
Oh my gosh!
And I was like, and she was like, "Oh my god!" So then she was like, "Okay, give me regular updates. Tell me everything."
Give me regular updates. Still can't watch the game.
Yeah, no, still didn't want to turn it on. But then we got to the theater, got into the lobby area, outside, and so we were watching it on my phone, and she was like, just turn it around when it's done. So I'm watching it alone. Not alone, but, I'm like only me seeing it. And then finally when the third out happened, I was like, here you go. And then she grabbed it and she's like, I want to watch all the post-game stuff.
Yeah, she's very similar to me. That's so funny. Eileen and I have always been very similar in so many ways. It always cracks me up. We're exactly the same when it comes to baseball. We just happen to like opposing teams. Very strongly opposing teams. Yes, Tamahome, this is very inside baseball. Literally. All right, so do we have enough? This is pre-show still. We have not started the actual show yet.
Should I start rolling my backup recording, though?
Yeah, sure.
Baseball talk, brought to you by Sword and Laser.
I know, it's about to be postseason. The postseason with Sword and Laser.
Make this postseason laser.
I didn't tweet out the live show link. Do you think I should do that?
Yeah, sure. I'll retweet you if you do.
I was going to do it on the Sword and Laser account. Yep. All right. What should I say?
Recording Sword and Laser. You can watch us at this link. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe I will tweet it out on my regular account. That seems stressful.
Why?
Because then it could bring all sorts of
that's too many people.
I don't know.
I got you.
I'll post it on Sword and Laser and then retweet it.
Make it rain. Sorry, I have the game on over here in the corner. And I just saw that commercial.
What is the Make It Rain?
The DraftKings commercial with the lady standing there telling you why you should bet all your money on DraftKings.
I see. All right. So
I cannot tell you anything about what she says, but she ends every commercial with, and make it rain. Like, that would be
Wouldn't
nice.
Wouldn't it be funny if I tweeted out the wrong link again and then everyone came in as producers? Blame it on the rain.
Blame it on the rain.
Yeah. Blame it on the rain. Thanks, Tamahome, for bringing in all the Discordites. Discordites.
Thanks, Tamahome.
Very cool. I posted about it earlier today.
They're doing and
I posted it on Patreon.
They're betting Quatloos on how many quick burns Jan gets in today's episode.
I didn't actually check.
I know.
So interesting.
I know because I put together the quick burns. But
yes, you did. All right. So no more baseball talk. I think we're good. Nothing else to cover there. We've got the rundown. Rundown looks good. I am drinking a Fort Point Animal. Okay. Okay, yeah. Looks good. All right, I didn't realize we were wrapping up tonight.
Are you finished?
It feels so early in the month. I'm finished.
Yeah, it's one of those
thankfully.
weird months where because we just go every 2 weeks, sometimes there's that early wrap up.
Yeah. They're asking if your background is blurred.
Yes, and I answered.
But to me, your whole video is blurred.
Yeah, my background is not blurred. I'm not blurred. This is all because of Veronica's internet connection.
What?
I look perfect on my
Blame
end.
Riverside. I didn't do it.
Yeah, no, it's something in the transmission. Because Veronica looks blocky to me.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a Minecraft character?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Minsta says, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I can read the names of the books to you if you want, because since you can't.
Yeah, I can't see anything.
Yeah,
I've still got my diagram on the background. I'm still letting it be a mystery about what it actually is.
By Gregory Van Eekhout, Terra Nullius.
Okay, we don't need this. We've only got like 40 minutes.
Hold on, I'm almost done.
Shall we clap?
Yeah.
You ready? All right, and 3, 2, 1. We'll let the audience decide if that seemed in sync or not. Cool. All right. Here we go. And 3, 2. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Sword and Laser. I'm Veronica Belmont.
And I'm Tom Merritt.
Sword and Laser is a book club, but it's so much more. We bring you author interviews, news from the world of science fiction and fantasy, and, of course, awesome discussions from fans just like you.
But we know there's at least one of you who only shows up to find out what we're drinking.
Yeah.
Actually, I've had one person tell me that. Steven told me. He's like, I listen to Sword and Laser just to find out what you're drinking. I actually didn't ask him if he stops listening at that point and just doesn't listen to the rest of the episode. That'd be funny.
Well, that feels like that's what's inferred.
Yeah.
There.
What are you drinking? All right, done. You only need to listen to the rest of this baloney.
This baloney. What are you drinking, Tom?
I'm going to disappoint you, Steve. I'm drinking a San Pellegrino. Not even a flavored
just a
one.
regular.
Yeah, just a plain old sparkling natural mineral water, bottled at the source.
That's nice.
In Terme, Bergamo, Italy.
It sounds refreshing. I am having a Fort Point Animal. It's kind of like one of their summery beers.
Oh, it's a beer. Whew.
What do you mean?
Didn't
the fresh blood of an animal?
Yeah, drinking an animal. Mm-hmm. Is it good?
Liquefied animal remains.
What kind of flavor profile does Fort Point Animal have?
It's an IPA.
Yeah, but is it...
So it's got it's supposed to have tropical notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I don't really get that from it.
If it had that flowery, fruity,
yeah, it's supposed
tropical,
to be like
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. It's got a nice terroir of...
what kind of nose does it have?
Animal butts.
Yeah. Delicious. Ray would love it.
Oh my gosh, we were on a hike yesterday and the dogs were like, ooh, what's that? And I was like, what's that? And Ryan was like, get away from it!
What was it?
And it was just a severed deer leg.
Oh no! Oh.
There was it's just like purely, just completely...
Actually, I was thinking it was going to be even worse. That's not great, trust me, but that's, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't post a trigger warning
for
of animal dismemberment. Yeah.
Ouch.
But I was like, oh, okay, it's going to be one of those hikes. Cool. No, it was fine. No dogs consumed any deer flesh that I'm aware of, so it all worked out okay. And Tom homing, Rudolph! No! Por qué?
Oh, the reindeer games were too deadly.
Reindeer games turned into squid games.
I mean, it is October. We are reading a horror novel, so, it all fits.
It is spooky season.
Yep.
Spooky
season. Boy, everybody talking about
let's
Squid Game. I'm a little put out.
I haven't watched it yet.
I'm a little put out that everyone suddenly is into Korean drama.
Okay.
I've been telling them
this is Tom's
for
thing.
years that Korean drama is amazing. Okay, finally. Welcome to the club.
But is it a Korean drama? I don't feel like it follows that same. Really,
it's not the stereotype. Obviously, if that's probably what you're meaning. It's not, because the stereotype K-drama is a romance, right? And Squid Game is certainly not a romance.
Yeah, I have only experienced Korean dramas by either staying at your house or you staying at my house. So that is my scope of knowledge.
There's a lot of Korean dramas that aren't romances, though, like Signal and Hotel Del Luna is kind of half romance. The Stranger, Law School, Little Sky Castle.
Well, this is We've gone down a Korean drama Squid Game.
Yes, sorry.
Dead Reindeer rabbit hole.
Took us off the leg and
took us to a new place.
Yeah.
Let's jump into Quick Burns.
Trike pointed out on the Quick Burns thread that Expanse Season 6 has a teaser trailer and an air date. Amazon Prime will be airing The Expanse on December 10th. Again, that's Season 6. But this is the final season. The idea seems to be that they would make movies of the books that we would have expected them to base later seasons on. So season 6 based on the 6th book, roughly. And then the later books might be fodder for movies, which I very much hope they are.
Now, would these be Amazon productions, or would they be like whole
it's
other
all
movies?
just
We don't know.
scuttlebutt right now, but yeah, it seems like it would make sense for them to be Amazon Studios, right?
That would be great. I am also very excited because December is The Witcher coming back. I think it's December 17th.
Yep.
So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, we got
That
The
is
Expanse,
high on
we
my
got
list.
The Witcher, and the Tiamat's Wrath, the final book in The Expanse coming at the end of November as well. So
lots of expansey goodness.
All right.
Jan says, everyone in the chat was very excited for Jan mentions. Here we go. Number 1. Jan says, German TV broadcaster ZDF adapts the domestic 2004 hit science fiction novel The Swarm by author Frank Schotzing in English for international audiences and will dub it into German for domestic audiences. Filming for the 8-part series has already finished. The Swarm plays on the concept that reckless treatment of the oceans will have unforeseen consequences and follows an ensemble of protagonists who are investigating what at first appear to be freak events related to the world's oceans.
Yeah. This is an eco sci-fi.
Is it cli-fi?
Yeah.
Cli-fi.
The book apparently got a lot of kudos for the scientific accuracy about ocean life in particular. This is a lot of under the sea stuff, like what we're doing to the oceans and deep ocean mining and things causes problems. You might, expect perhaps a swarm of some deadly way.
Spoilers.
Yeah. The Swarm, or in German, Der Swarm. No, it's Der Schwarm, but it's pretty close.
I 100% believed you.
It's Der Schwarm.
100%.
It's almost exactly the same. Anyway, yeah.
Okay.
And I apologize to Jan for butchering what little German I'm trying to pronounce right now. But yeah, this looks great. I actually want to read the science fiction novel now as well, but I might just wait to see who picks this up. They're making this...
Wait, I thought Jan was Dutch.
Okay.
No, but you said what little German?
Because the name is...
Jan
the book is in
German?
German.
But you said you apologized to Jan.
Because he submitted the story.
Oh.
I don't know. Okay. Jan might speak German, too.
I don't know. He probably does. It's very possible.
You're the German in the crowd.
Me?
Yeah. Don't you have German?
Partially.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Prussian.
Oh, I see. we're a Frederick the Great partisan.
Let's be specific here.
Very good. Very good. All is good, or something.
Alles gut.
Yeah.
Alles gut.
See, your German pronunciation is pretty good. It's just in your genetics, I guess. Anyway, no, what I was going to say is it's interesting they're making this in English. You mentioned that, and I don't want us to gloss over that too much, because the idea is even though it's a German book and a German production, they're making it in English so that they can sell it internationally.
Got it. Aren't there a lot of things called The Swarm?
Yeah, there are, aren't there?
I feel like there's a lot of things called the Swarm, so that was why. I feel like there's a vampire thing called the Swarm. It's not this thing, is it?
No, this does.
Is
Well,
this all vampires in the sea?
From the write-up in The Guardian that came along with Jan's posting, I did not get the idea there are vampires, but I can't say for sure.
I just assume everything is vampires.
Yeah,
All right,
what's wise?
We can move on.
It's mine. Mark, in a follow-up discussion to last year's post-apocalyptic present, the Supreme Laser. Oh, that's me. This is awkward.
That's you, yeah.
You know what's funny is when I read this on Goodreads, I saw Supreme and immediately just assumed it meant you. I was like, oh, wait, no, this one's about me.
Well, I'm Supreme Sword.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I got this Supreme. I'm like, oh, it's about Veronica. Then I'm like, saw Laser. And I was like, oh, wait, no. It's me this time. Anyway, I joined Bianca Lopez, Ian Tregellis, Lonnie Nadler, Mark Russell, and Paul Constant in a discussion about the post-apocalyptic past. Kind of since we've been in somewhat apocalyptic-ish times lately, we talked about what it's like to write apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic stories and how that may have changed given the pandemic and all that stuff. Hosted by the incomparable Dan Campos on churrosypalomitas.com. It was great. It was a really, really fun conversation.
Awesome. What is Ian Tregellis up to these days?
He's writing books.
Writing good stuff?
I would assume so.
I haven't caught up with him in a minute. Yeah, he's great. Well, cool. That sounds like it would be a fun listen. How do you have the time to do all these other things?
That's all I do.
Increíble. All right. And then Cami says the Star Trek novelverse is coming to an end with a trilogy of books. Just like Star Wars did with their novels before their new canon, Star Trek are doing the same and wrapping things up, only they're doing it in universe with a big bad affecting all of reality. Mm-hmm. There will still be Star Trek novels, obviously, but they will all conform to the Picard timeline now. Really looking forward to reading these, and if you're in America, you can read it right now, while I have to wait until the 14th of October, according to Cami.
Yeah, I was reading up. Thank you, Cami, for tipping us off to this. I was reading up a little more on it, and basically they ran into the Star Wars problem, which is they went a long time between Star Trek Nemesis, the movie, and Star Trek Discovery, and because the J.J. Abrams movies that filled in the gap were in an alternate universe, the novels just kind of took off and sort of, they brought Sisko back from the wormhole and made Ezri Dax a captain and gave Riker an admiralty and Picard had a son and there's just all this stuff that happened. And then they brought Discovery out and they're like, oh crap. What do we do now?
Wait, Picard had a son? No, Riker had a son.
In the novels.
In the novels, Picard had a son?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm behind.
Yeah.
Well, and clearly,
I'm not going to say they ran wild, but they had latitude to do a lot of stuff. And now they're doing Discovery and Lower Decks, and Star Trek Prodigy is coming out, another animated one. Obviously, Star Trek Picard when it came out. Mm-hmm. The three authors of this trilogy pitched the idea. Let us bring this novel verse to an end. Let's write a 3-part story that ends the novel verse, ties it up, and then we can reboot and start writing novels that are still in universe to Star Trek: The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, but don't have to rely on everything that was told in the novels prior.
Fascinating.
Yes,
that
thank you,
sounds really hard. That sounds really difficult to do. That sounds like a whole mess.
I guess what they're doing is like they're going to claim that the novels were a splinter, very similar to the TV shows in many ways, but not entirely, and that reality is going to implode or something. I don't know. I'm very curious what they.
Sounds like, well, as they say, it's going to be a big bad.
Yeah.
Some kind of, universe-ending event of some kind, perhaps.
And
I don't know for sure.
Star Trek tie-in fans, don't worry. There will be more books, just like there are in Star Wars, even after they do this.
Absolutely.
And then Seth pointed out that lithub.com has a page picking the 25 most iconic book covers with a few science fiction and fantasy covers on here. Although, honestly, it's a little literary for my taste. I'm not going to say I was disappointed, but I was looking.
This Brave New World.
I was looking for a Dune. I was looking for a Philip K. Dick. We got Fahrenheit 451, like you say, Brave New World. What's his name? Kurt Vonnegut. You got Clockwork Orange on here. This is all.
I mean, these are all good. They're just all old.
These are all books that I would have shelved in the literature section when I was working in a bookstore.
Did it claim to be? They didn't claim to be SFF genre, right?
And I'm not blaming anyone. This is I'm not angry. I'm just saying when Seth said, "Ooh, they picked a few sci-fi covers," I'm like, "Cool," and I was imagining Asimov, Dune, the golden age of sci-fi covers. And they don't have any of those, but
honestly. There is obviously fantastic books, but they're all they're iconic. I guess iconic means that they need to be kind of like classic, so a little bit on the older side. But there's no like.
Yeah, I'll be honest.
I feel like there's nothing modern that could also be still iconic.
Jurassic Park is probably the most modern one, isn't it? Yeah, they're all fairly.
Or American Psycho, 91. Yeah, American Psycho's a little younger.
A little younger. Okay, yeah. Yeah, these are definitely like, well, you have to be old to be iconic kind of attitude.
I guess
towards picking this.
Like,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that seems to be the feeling here. Is like it's going to have to be at least 20 years old or more. I mean, I don't disagree. You know what? I disagree with one selection. Every one of these, I'm like, is classic.
I also disagree with one selection.
Which one is
at least one? Mine's a Confederacy of Dunces.
Oh, really? No, I like that. I think that is a very classic cover. I recognize all these covers from working in the bookstore years ago because they're all from the 90s.
All right, which one? Which one do you not
the
agree
Unbearable
with?
Lightness of Being, and it's not that I don't like the hands and the hat. I think that's great. Mm-hmm. They overdid it on the rest of it. They've got the New York Review of Books poll quote. They've got international bestseller up across.
I see.
Like they kind of ruined it. So,
what is your favorite one?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm not even sure.
I have a favorite.
I've always liked the Atlas Shrugged reissue cover. I love Art Deco stuff. The Clockwork Orange one's pretty cool. I think my favorite's probably up here. I'm still scrolling up.
My favorite is Jaws.
Oh, that's a great one.
I just like the not white space, but the contrast and.
I'll tell you what, I'm torn. I want to say Great Gatsby because I think that's just a fantastic cover, and it's like I know what it is without barely looking at it more than a second. But I think I'm going to go with where'd it go? The Tennessee Williams. Yeah, Streetcar Named Desire.
I'm frankly embarrassed by how few of these I've actually read. I think I need to make some time for more classics in my life.
And that was the day Sword and Laser became a classic literature book club.
We'll kick things off with Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah. Next week, Camus.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that about wraps it up for Quick Burns. Thank you for everyone who contributed to our Quick Burns. You can do so by either posting in Discord or on Goodreads in our Quick Burns thread. All right, now it is time for Bury Your Sword, which is our feedback from the audience. And our first one is a Beth Mitchum.
Yes!
She did a review of Nosferatu. Good morning, Jan. Jan's in the audience. He missed his big scene, but it's okay.
Oh, and by
Jan,
the way, number of quick
are
hits.
Are you Dutch or German?
2 questions.
2 questions to kick things. He's German. No.
Jan, you're gonna enjoy the opening of this show. Also, one Jan quick burn today.
One
they
Jan
were
quick
betting
burn.
in the Discord, Jan, about how many.
The count was 1. All right, Beth Mitchum, another fabulous contributor to our community, says, Nosferatu, Joe Hill. Wimpy me is proud of making it through this book, although I read a lot of it peering through my fingers. Kid Danger is kryptonite for me, and this ride was fueled by it. Hill knows how to get pages turned.
Beth, it's like I don't even realize you're in a character count. You're so good at this.
I know, so good, so good.
It's dead
no wasted
on.
words.
Yeah. Good editing, Beth Mitchum. And not a warning, but heads up that most of our Bury Your Swords are about Nosferatu. None of those are spoilery. You're fine. We won't spoil anything until we get to the wrap-up. later. For instance, Tamahome writes, Charlie Manx from Nosferatu is obviously patterned after Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. Excellent. We will go to Christmas.
And this was a thread started by Daryl over on Goodreads that Tamahome is pointing to, who said, I can't get the idea out of my head that Charlie Manx looks exactly like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. Old, balding, liver spots, large nose, and prodigious overbite. Mr. Burns' first name is even Charles. Makes me giggle, but it's still terrifying. I love the book, by the way, both reading and listening to Kate Mulgrew.
Yeah, Kate.
I didn't picture him that way.
So good.
I didn't. I can totally understand why the comparison is being made. And then Ian says, that's pretty funny, but I have to say that Zachary Quinto was brilliant as Manx on the show. The show was perfect, in my humble opinion, he said. Once I knew that Zachary Quinto was Manx, I kept trying to kind of like shoehorn him into the role. But honestly, I just kept picturing like a modern-looking Nosferatu from the German film.
Really? Oh, yeah. I get that.
Yeah, because I got it in my head, like making the album art and the name. I just kept picturing him, but like more modern, wearing like modern clothes.
I was picturing,
like a little bit
probably
younger.
Nobody else has seen this in our audience, but I was picturing the 1950s era black and white Christmas Carol movie, the Ebenezer Scrooge from that. Okay. Because Manx has kind of a Scrooge-like appearance. And it involves Christmas.
That's so funny that they never make that comparison. Yeah. And I feel like that would be really interesting. But he loves Christmas where Scrooge hates Christmas.
Right. He's the anti-Scrooge.
Though at the end, Scrooge loves Christmas.
He loves Christmas, but he is evil and never gets redeemed.
And we were both, well, we'll talk about this in the book wrap-up. But he does, I remember how I was saying how I thought he was 40. And you were like, no, I thought he was older. Yeah. And he just, by the end of the book, he looks like he's in his 30s.
Oh, okay.
So it just depends on like kind of when you interact with him or like what stage of healing feeding. And life he's in. Mm-hmm. He's an energy vampire. And then Nicholas Pratt says, Colin Robinson. Nicholas Pratt says on Twitter, Nosferatu is great, really dark and disturbing. From my Goodreads review, the idea that we, quote, live in two worlds, the real world and the world of thought, is the powerful and thought-provoking theme of Hill's book. Then he goes on to say, I personally wasn't a fan of Mexican Gothic, which is the book that I'm reading right now.
Okay.
Fair. Fair to have that take.
I totally agree with that idea of the world of thought and the quote unquote real world. Because really, when I hit that line the first time, I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. Because honestly, all of us live in the world of thought all the time. None of us are actually directly perceiving the real world. We're all interpreting what our brain tells us is going on in the real world. And there's all kinds of, you can get all philosophical about what that means or whatever. But that was very...
I actually think I wish I had, I didn't read this on Kindle, and it's harder to highlight things on Kindle than it is on, it's harder to highlight things on Amazon than it is in Kindle, obviously. But there was, I'm pretty sure this was Luke Harmondy who said, he was able to believe Vic throughout everything, because how weird is it that, we go into other worlds of thought all the time when we read fiction or get obsessed with comic books. Like, these thoughts happen in people's minds. Yeah. They invent whole separate worlds.
Right.
Like, how difficult is it to believe that someone could make it physical?
I definitely, especially in my 20s, when I would come out of a movie, would feel like I was in the movie. For a short, for a short period of time, it'd take me a while to kind of readjust to being in the real world. And then we have that phrase: "I was worlds away. I was miles away. I was in a whole other world." That kind of stuff.
Yeah. What even is real life? I mean,
is this real life?
Is this real life?
Yeah, a classic.
All right, well, should we wrap up the book?
Yes, let's do it. Nosferatu by Joe Hill. If you're not done yet, you might want to pause and come back when you are, because we will be getting spoilery about the book now. Let's start with a little less spoilery. We'll ease you in case you're scrambling to get to your pause button or something. Buzz started a thread called Not Just Horror, Also Urban Fantasy. Said, I'm really enjoying the book and the discussions that have popped out about it so far. There have been many comments about this being a horror novel, which it is. However, I think it could also be classified as an urban fantasy novel. Without getting spoilery, we discover very early on that our protagonist has a very special skill. Later on, we find that there is more to the world than what can be seen through general observation. These are common urban fantasy tropes, right? There's something special about what's her face from that one movie? Oh crap! I'm totally failing. My memory totally failed me. Twilight. What's her?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, there's something special about her, and then later we find out there are vampires and werewolves. These are common urban fantasy tropes, and I think this book easily fits into that category as well as horror. Anyone else find that this book is not out of the norm for a sword and laser pick for that reason?
I can definitely see it as being urban fantasy, and frankly, I think it was in the Nope for You Two thread where they were talking about how Black. What was that other book that we read that was really awful and scary? Red and Black Moon.
Oh. Yes, now I know what you're talking about.
Black Leopard, Red Wolf. Thank you, Count Zeroer.
My goodness. You know that one book?
These are the benefits of having a live chat. I appreciate it.
Yeah, not only do you get a bonus quick burn from Jan. Quick burn.
Should we do we need to take a break to read Jan's bonus quick burn?
I don't know. Should we leave it as a bonus for the chat?
It should just be for all right, it's just for the chat then. Yeah. Just chat can enjoy it.
We'll tell them what it was. The first annual Ursula K. Le Guin Prize for Fiction will be awarded in 2022.
Sweet.
If you want to know more,
$25,000 cash prize.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, or listen to Veronica as she tells you.
So, as I digress, Black Leopard, Red Wolf was, I would say, far more disturbing than this book was for me. If we're just ranking it on like disturbing levels. I mean, and your mileage may vary.
Sure.
Some things are going to be more disturbing for some people than others, obviously. That's why we gave some trigger warnings for this book in particular before we started reading it. But I expected this to be a lot more scary, I think. I can definitely see the urban fantasy tropes coming out when I think about it, like now that he's brought it up. There is that like chosen one kind of vibe. There is a magical system that exists. Alternate worlds within a world are pretty common in urban fantasy. It takes place in modern times. A tough chica, on a motorcycle, gives very like Kate Elliott vibes. So there's, that kind of stuff. Like, she didn't ride a motorcycle, but that's beside the point. Still, I can see they'd be compatible. They would get along, I think, if they met. So yeah, I can see that. That's why, like, so many of these books are genre bending. It can be hard sometimes to categorize things like this because I think Joe Hill obviously comes from a horror background. He's got the horror pedigree, more so probably than anyone in the world. And so him writing a book like this, yes, there's horror elements, but yeah, it's also could just be a scary urban fantasy or like a slightly disturbing urban fantasy. Horror, I mean, maybe my definition for horror is a little bit different than the average person. Who knows? Or maybe it's not. But like torture porn for me is horror. Things that are scary and paranormal are not horror to me. Mm-hmm. So I just have like a different kind of like barometer for what I consider horror.
That's a very narrow horror definition. Torture porn.
That's my definition. I'm sticking to it.
It's not torture porn.
If it's Saw or Hostel, I'm not watching it.
Well, I think people would argue about whether
it.
those are actually torture porn, some of them, or not, I guess. But I get what...
Saw and Hostel, they're 100% torture porn.
Okay.
I mean, it's not sex porn. It's not that kind of porn.
Right.
It's I mean,
well, that's the problem with categories, right? There's no law. we made up the categories, we made up the names, and we make up what they mean. So we can all shift the goalposts anytime we want in these discussions. So it's never about what is it; it's about what's a useful definition of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you're right. There's a useful definition for shared categories, like in a bookstore, like what should go in the horror section. That's a different conversation than what does Veronica consider horror.
Yeah, like for example, in chat, like Tamahome says dark fantasy. So yeah, is Joe Abercrombie, is that actually horror?
Definitely got horror elements to it, for sure.
Count to Money says that Simmons book, Hyperion, is that horror? That book messed me up. That was scary as heck. So yeah, that to me, I think that like poked more horror buttons for me than in some parts this book did. Yeah. That's just my vibe. You know, you're right. You're totally right.
2 responses in this thread that I think bear on this. Lisa says, I think nearly all horror has a supernatural magic element to it, thus falls into the fantasy genre. For Lisa, horror is just a subcategory of fantasy. She says if it has no supernatural, I agree with that. Hold on. If it has no supernatural or magic element, she files it under thriller.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I think of thrillers as being more suspenseful and horror as being more like gory, scary. So it's just, you know, it's all gravy. It's just people, I think we define things in different ways. We have different tolerances, different definitions. Jan says the classic example in movies, of course, is Alien, sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
You know, is that science fiction or horror?
Yeah.
Both. It's both.
It's both. It absolutely is both. And Trike, I thought, had a really good point, which is stories can be, and usually are, more than one subgenre. Horror tends to be a spice rather than the meal itself, but it can be its own thing. I think,
I don't know, just using the word meal, talking about all this is making me very
gory
uncomfortable.
horror. I looked at this and I was like, oh yeah, horror could be it's like cheese. Horror can be something you eat on its own, or it could be an ingredient in something else.
All right. Well,
horror
moving on.
Horror is like cheese, Veronica.
Horror is like cheese. So I should love horror. Horror. That's the title. Horror is like cheese. I'm writing it now.
Just add it to the doc right now. Do you want me to read this next one?
Cheese. Sure,
That's
go
really
ahead.
short. Tamahome in the Discord pointed out a link on Ranker.com to every Stephen King reference Joe Hill included in Nosferatu. There's also a thread from Buzz and Goodreads on this as well if you want to get a look at that. This was incredibly
So how many did you pick up at the time? Do you remember
I'd say
how many people picked up?
roughly 3/4 of them.
3/4? That's high. Good for you.
Well, because I went on a Stephen King kick about 10 years ago.
That's right. When you read you reread like all of Dark Tower,
all the Dark Tower books, and all the ancillary books that went with Dark Tower.
I remember that.
Yeah. So the Pennywise stuff, the road to Midgard, all that stuff I got the Shawshank one. I did not get the Saint Bernard as a possible Cujo nod.
No.
Feels like it might be a stretch, but Cujo was a Saint Bernard, so I don't know. And then Charlie Manx's Wraith may be a reference to the possessed car Christine. I'm like, that definitely feels like a stretch to me.
I mean, it makes sense. I get that, especially in the scene where Wayne is they're like in the garage at the House of Sleep, and the car is like responding to him and like locking the doors and like
okay, maybe it's not as much of a
felt a little
stretch
Christine-ish.
as I thought. The other thing was the references to Hill's own works, the stuff about Treehouse of the Mind and the Lock and Key reference to Lovecraft, Massachusetts. I caught those as well.
And then I didn't get this as a reference because I haven't read the book, but I noticed it at the time and it felt important. I'm trying to find this reference here. It was when Charlie Manx was talking about... Okay, here it is. When Charlie Manx is talking about, like, the other, like, baddies in the world. And, where is it?
Is it the other
I can't find
locations
it.
or the other...
Well, the other
Is this
locations,
the reference
but
to
no,
Dr.
he was talking
Sleep?
about like no.
Oh, okay. Because I did
It
not
was
get that.
the,
I have not read Dr. Sleep, so there was a reference to Dr. Sleep apparently, but I didn't get that.
Yeah, I haven't read that either. I have read Cujo, which is weird.
I mean, I know Cujo is a Saint Bernard, but I don't think of it as a Saint Bernard for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think I always thought of Cujo as being a Rottweiler.
I know.
Even though I know that's not true.
That's not
Did you
true.
think of that as well?
Yes. We've been deceived
Are we
by
biased against
visual media.
Okay, so it was the True Knot.
Yeah, that's what I
their
just
villains.
said.
Is that what you said?
Well, I didn't say the True Knot. I said Dr. Sleep.
Oh, are they from Dr.
Yeah.
Sleep? Oh, you're right. Okay. Sorry, I haven't read Dr. Sleep, so I didn't even know that.
Okay.
But I remember
Gotcha,
when Charlie Manx was talking about it, I remember this line where he says, "There is a true lot who live on the road and are much in the same line of work as myself. I leave them be, and they are glad to return the favor." And at the time, I read that, and I was like, "Oh, what's their deal?
Mm-hmm.
What are they about?"
Yeah, you kind of knew it was
And
a
so I was
reference to something, but you didn't know what.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And in this Ranker article, it says that Joe Hill said all those references are a lark. He was like, I was just goofing around. He's like, he's like, don't ask me how they fit in, because I was just having fun and then sprinkling in references. He says, this novel is my senior thesis on horror fiction.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. Well, we'll talk about that afterwards. But I wanted to read this post from Ricardo. It's called An Unexpected Gut Punch. And it really impacted me. So Ricardo says, this book reminds me that each of us bring very different things into the fiction we consume. Things that are dependent on the exact moment that you absorb it. I first read Nosferatu several years ago. In the middle of reading it, my mother suddenly passed away. Needless to say, I didn't try to get back into anything for some time. I dreaded getting back into the novel, knowing there was already a mother-son dynamic. But upon finishing it, I realized it was exactly what I needed to read at the time. Apart from the superficial pleasures that this narrative provides, I thought it was also a potent indictment of how we tend to fetishize youth. The evil that Manx exhibited wasn't meant to harm children, it was to preserve their innocence and keep them frozen in time. This paralysis fueled his immortality, but at the expense of those children's growth. Such clinging to a simpler past can prohibit the maturity that complexity and adulthood can afford us. There's a saying that one does not come fully adult until your parents pass away. Sounds grim, but I think it's meant to convey that such a transition should provide a new perception of the world around you. It lays the foundation for a new reality. I think what Nosferatu argues is that the transition should be embraced and that pining for a more innocent past is worse. Vic's death is clearly tragic, but if a parent's ultimate goal is to embolden their child to take their own fulfilling steps in life, rather than keep them frozen in youth, then she successfully accomplished that. Whatever the topic of favorite novels come up, I might get confused looks when I mention Nosferatu. My only explanation is that some works just hit you at the right time. Or, put another way, the right book can work for you at your personal worst time.
Thank you, Ricardo. That is amazing. Both as an example of how we all bring different things into books, even at different times. If we read the same book at a different time in our lives, I've certainly found that to be true. But that saying that one does not become fully adult until your parents pass away, man, oof. Very true. Absolutely.
Yeah, that hits. I related to this in a lot of ways because, as most of you know, like I had my first child this year, and he's a boy human, and I had a hard time getting into this book at first because I was very I don't think I was ready to deal with like violence against children, and. Not to say that anyone wouldn't be affected by that. Like, obviously, I was feeling, particularly sensitive to that in that moment. And I pushed through, and I'm glad I did. And there were still a lot of like very difficult passages, I think, in the book. Ultimately, with the exception of the four who get out and stay out, at the very end of the book, those children were saved, and And Wayne was saved, and the evil was vanquished for the most part. And Vic did die, and that was no Tamahome. My son is not named Bruce Wayne. I'm talking about the guy in the book. But yeah, it was tough, and I had to like keep thinking like, this is just fiction. This is just fiction. This is not happening. And even like the sexual violence, from Bing and all that entailed was super difficult to read. But it was about the kids, I think that affected a lot of us reading this book the most and prevented a lot of people from picking up the book in the first place. And understandably so. It's that can be a hard, I'm sure a lot of people have that same reaction reading it. It's hard to see children be traumatized.
Yeah, there's a few thoughts that I have on that, because that's all really, really deep, thought-provoking stuff. One is, anytime your life condition changes, how you read is going to fall different. Just on a very small level, becoming a dog owner made me way less tolerant of seeing violence against dogs than I was before I was a dog owner, right? And that's just pets.
Totally.
So I can't imagine what it's like, to be like, no, I have an actual human child now. And as you get older, maybe not for everybody, but I'm not the only one who I've talked to around my age that feels this way, and people older than me, because you've built up so many more experiences, things that seem cheesy when you're young or goofy or you're desensitized to hit harder, because when you're young, you're more likely to think something's unrealistic because you haven't experienced it yet. And as you get older, you have more experiences. You're like, actually, I used to think that was cheesy, but I've been in that situation. I felt that way. That, hearing that cheesy thing would have, really helped me out in a hard situation. And so there's all that on top of it too. And Charlie Manx, man, he plays on that. He plays on that stuff to get the kids in, right? Things that would make an adult's skin crawl. Kids are like, ooh, that sounds fun. So this is, what I'm about to say, if you just can't deal with it, trust me, I am not saying anyone should force you to deal with it. But just because a book is difficult doesn't mean it's not worth reading sometimes, because once you get to the end, you may have learned things about yourself or have a new way of looking at things that you wouldn't have if you hadn't pushed on through, I think. Yeah.
We should talk about Vic a little bit. I feel like we've covered a lot of the feelings that the book has conveyed to us. We didn't really get into the book itself. Did you like it?
That's after this long conversation. We just had such a loaded question.
I know. Did you like it? Did you enjoy reading it?
Yeah. The trope for me sometimes is I didn't enjoy reading it, but I'm glad I read it. I actually wouldn't say that about this. I not only enjoy having read it, I enjoyed certain parts of it. But there were also parts where I was not enjoying it, and I knew I would get back to a point. But that's a good story, right? You have ups and downs, and in a really good story, the downs make you want to bail. And that this book definitely did that. I just think the twisted genius of having the villain be pro-Christmas and not even the religious Christmas, like all the things
maybe we should have read this on December instead.
The things that people say about Christmas, they're like, even if you're not religious, Christmas is a time of joy, and having Charlie Manx parrot all that, it's just, it's so creepy, so unsettling, so uncomfortable, and so genius to be like, yeah, but that doesn't, just saying it doesn't absolve you of guilt, doesn't absolve your behavior. And Christmas is, well, I think one of my favorite holidays and a potential for a very joyous time. A lot of times it's a very sad time, or it can be used as a cover for not very pretty things. And you don't see that explored very often. If anything, what you see is like, the drunk family on Christmas. This was supposed to be a happy day, right? Not, here's a murderer who steals children and takes them to Christmas land. Oh my gosh.
He's totally an energy vampire.
He really is.
He's Colin Robinson.
He is. He's a much more twisted and evil Colin Robinson. But we're still not talking about Vic, because
you don't know.
Vic's the reason I kept reading. Vic was my hero, and I love that Vic is very positive as a child, as many children are, and then jaded as an adult, and trying to be told that what she experienced couldn't have been real. Is this sort of the parallel
Right.
of like, get over your dreams, this is the real world kind of situation, but that shorter way was real, and necessary for her to be able to save her son by the end, even if she couldn't save herself.
It was very frustrating because you wanted someone to understand, to see, and the only person who understood and saw was Charlie Manx for so long.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And, you know, like when there's only a handful of people you know, and one of them is your captor and, like, effectively torturer, that can really mess you up. I can imagine.
Yeah.
And it messed all of them up. You know, nobody who was touched by this, you know, came out unscathed, you know, whether it was Maggie or whether it was Lou. Everyone was impacted by it.
There are
Vic,
no
more so.
Mary Sues. The story.
There are no Mary Sues, no. But yeah, Vic as a character, I mean, I related to her a lot. And someone, I think it was Tamahome, said that Vic reminded them of me on the TV show. I was like, ooh, because I kind of felt that, like, while I was reading the book, too, in some ways.
Sure.
You know, I always wanted the fantastical to be real. I always wanted to find my shorter way as a kid, and believed that I was, you know, the chosen one, as so many of us do, I think, as young people who have that mindset and have that, you know, fantastical thinking. And yeah, it was, yeah. And then Lou was sorry, I'm just kind of like thinking through emotions and feelings about it. And then Lou was such a gentle, kind soul, and that he just loved her no matter what. And even if they, you know, could sometimes be, you know, she was kind of self-destructive in so many ways, but he was always there to support her. And ultimately, I think they were good parents, you know, even though Vic was so messed up. I think Wayne did see how much she loved him and how much she was trying. And I think that's, you know, even if you do have a rough time of it, hopefully that's the thing that he carries with him. And I was so upset at the end, not knowing that he was going to be okay. You know, in the ending kind of sequence where he's still having those feelings of being in Christmas land and wanting to, you know, kill and maim and destroy just because it would be fun. And you're like, oh my God, he's going to be like, this is going to be his life. Like, he's going to grow up this way, and he's going to be the next Charlie Manx, and he's going to, like, reopen Christmas land, and that's going to be the next book. And it was all for nothing. But then he's saved in the end because of Lou. Ultimately, I mean, like, Vic saved him, but, like, Lou, like, fixed him.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
You know, and to me, that was like, they worked together as parents in the end to save their son. And I thought that was pretty great. Yeah,
I think this is one of the reasons it probably hit Ricardo so hard is these characters are all complex. Even Charlie Manx. Charlie Manx is very evil. But even Charlie Manx isn't 100% evil, right? He's like 97, 98. But there's a part of Charlie, I mean, the fact that Charlie uses Christmas land, Charlie really believes that. Like, that's from Charlie's own horrible upbringing, is that Christmas was supposed to be joyous and it was a lie, but he's going to fix that, right? And I'm not saying he has a redemption arc or anything, but he even gave the villain a tiny bit of humanity, right? That's shriveled and lost, but it's there. And everybody else is incredibly complex. Nobody is flat. You get, through the course of this story, the idea painted out that everyone thinks their parents should be more perfect than they are. No human is capable of that. And even bad parents, like Vic's father, can be good. And can, you know, and can want good. And that I thought of that in relation to a lot of the conversations we have these days about blaming people and whether they can be forgiven and all of that, and honestly, Vic's father should be canceled, right? But Joe Hill makes a case for, yes, he should be held responsible and should not be forgiven, but that doesn't mean he's not still Vic's father, and under certain conditions they need each other. That's a tough point to try to make work, and I think he does a fairly decent job. I don't know if you agree.
No, I totally agreed. Yeah. The complexity, there's so much complexity there, and it's so hard to love someone who ultimately does bad things or has done bad things, or
unforgivable things
is not. Yeah. So that's tough. The characters, as Tom Mahomey says in chat, are so good. I think they're all fully formed in so many ways. And that made it like a really great read for me.
Even Bruce.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Bruce is like kids. Usually you give people a pass. It's a kid. How complex could they be? Bruce is incredibly complex. So good. Yeah.
He read a little bit older than 12.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
Will say.
If there's a criticism, I think
sometimes.
that's it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And honestly, like
just precocious.
There were like when he was on the road with Manx. I hate to say it, but there were a few times where I was like, Manx not so bad.
Right? No, that's what I'm saying.
I was
that's
like, okay, he's kind of likable in some ways.
Yeah. And whenever Manx would
up.
explain himself, he would say, well, it would be bad for me to do this, but the reason I have to, right? It was like, there was always an internal logic to Manx that you could follow, right? It's
but I kind of felt like I was being like gaslit.
Totally.
It was totally
you're
like,
being
oh, I see.
Yeah.
Bing was pretty awful just in every regard. Like I did not have a lot of Bing sympathy.
But you knew why he got there. It wasn't he wasn't just evil. I'm not, again, same thing as Manx, not excusing him, not saying he was a good guy or anything deep down, but there was humanity there. It was someone that you're like, well, yeah, I
deeply disturbed.
He shouldn't have made those choices, but I see why he did.
Yeah. So anyway, all in all, I definitely enjoyed the book. It kept me going. Kate Mulgrew's performance in the audiobook was stellar. That definitely helped for me. And I kept coming. I was looking for chores to do. It was one of those. Got to find the chores. Got to clean the whole house. Got to vacuum.
Yeah, for sure. I was just with this one. I was just sitting and listening to it. I'd have a baseball game on and just listen to this and not pay attention to the game. Just
right on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our show. Unless you have anything else you want to add, Tom.
I would like to add good choice. And,
all right.
And keep an eye out on the Patreon for the November choice, because we will kick off the November choice in the next episode.
On November 3rd.
Which will be November 3rd. So patrons, you'll get the book briefing. That'll let you know. Rob will make sure to let people know in the Discord and post it on Goodreads. Thank you, Rob. And one thing I will give a distant heads up. I don't want to confuse people. This is not the November pick.
Are you going to confuse me? Have you talked to me about this?
But
is the thing you talked to me about already.
I'm going to announce a pick ahead of time because it's so long. So the March 2022 pick, should we still be around as a civilization, in March 2022, we're going to read Peter F. Hamilton's Pandora's Star.
Okay.
That's not the November pick. You can forget about that. We'll remind you again, but we're just gonna pick that one now, so people got.
But it is the November pick.
No, it is not the November pick.
It's not. It's the March pick.
It's the March pick.
We haven't announced the November pick.
We have not announced the November pick. Correct.
Just giving you a head start on March.
Plenty of room ahead of time.
How long is long? Is it like one Q84 long? I think the
audiobook is 37 hours.
Okay, so it's like one Q84 long. It's longer.
Yeah.
Wow, that's long.
It's really long. Tamahome, who advocated for this pick, said, better start reading it now.
All right. I'm reading, I'm listening right now to Victories Greater Than Death by Charlie Jane Anders.
Oh, nice.
I don't think that's super long, so I'll finish this after. I'll do that. I'll start that after this.
Yeah.
And make that my audiobook pick.
1,000-page book coming in March.
All right, Tom. Is this the longest pick we've ever had?
I don't know. It might be. If 1Q84 is longer, that'd be the only one I could think of that's close. Because even Mist of Avalon, I think, was only 700 or 800.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Thank you so much to you out there, our patrons. Thank you so much for backing our show. If you want to help support us, you can head over to patreon.com. Hold on. Jan says in German it would be 1.5 length. So just so you know, in case you're reading in German. Thank you to all our patrons over at patreon.com/swordandlaser. Oh, 1Q84 was 46 hours, so it's not as long as 1Q84. Okay.
Unless I'm remembering the amount of hours wrong of Pandora's Store.
Either way, totally long.
That's the point.
Picks, Tom, picks.
You can also support the show by buying books through our links. Bookshop.org. We have links to bookshop.org, so you can support your local bookshop. Find links to the books we talk about and some of our favorites at swordandlaser.com/picks.
Send us an email, feedback at swordandlaser.com. We are on Instagram and Twitter at swordandlaser. And you can join in on all the discussions at goodreads.com/swordandlaser. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, chat room.
Bye, chat room.
Love ya. Bye.
I can't
Going
go
offline.
back.
Bye, 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 bye. Excited for Witcher 2. Bye. Bye.